Well, hello, everyone. It is Friday, and aren't we glad about that? Although, in perspective, it's just another day. But anyway, thank you for being here. I want to invoke much favor upon you. May this day find you with nothing missing, nothing broken in your life. So, welcome, everyone. Hello, all the moderators. Thank you for the fantastic job you do, and all the rest that are coming in here. Now, having said that, I am very pleased, and it is a joy to introduce my next guest. I think today you're going to find, well, if you are an entrepreneur and you have artistic capabilities, I think you're going to find today's program fascinating. So, with that being said, hello, Trisha. And Trisha, would you give us your last name, please? Because I don't like to butcher them.
Sure. Well, thank you for having me. Trisha Navidzadeh is my full name, and I'm really happy to be here today. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Trisha. It's when you first reached out to me, I have to say it was not something that I had considered. I mean, entrepreneurship, space exploration, how do those two go together? And I thank you for reaching out because I think this is an opportunity that is so rich for those who, and I'll just say this as a serial entrepreneur, that you can literally become nothing more than a person with a dream and a vision, and then become, if it's your vision to be wealthy off of your idea, this is it. So, Trisha, tell me how you got involved with this.
It was very random for me. I was working in the surf industry, believe it or not, and in 2008, and the economy, crashed like in one day, and
Like a lead balloon.
it was bad. And that boat that I was on, got hit, and it was a sinking boat, and I just was sitting there, and I thought, I really want to get off this planet. Very random, as in a thought. I had never even been interested in space, not one bit. Never took an astronomy class. Just never really occurred to me. And so I Googled, get off this planet. How do you get off this planet? And I saw Richard Branson had a space project, and no one had really heard of it then. And I made a blind call, a cold call, and I started working with them. And it opened me up to this whole new world of private space and access to everyday people to participate in space. And I was blown away. And so that was probably about 10 years ago. And, the private space industry has come a long way since then. There's still a lot more to go, but yeah, that's how I got involved. And I was originally working with Virgin Galactic as a consultant to sell space tickets for their suborbital missions. And today I'm working a little bit more on connecting corporations and brands into private space activities that they can leverage for content, research, development, and be able to make a business model out of it and help create jobs on Earth and in space. And so that's where my background is.
I love the fact, can we jump back a little bit? So here you are, you come out of the surf industry, which is a sport I loved when I was, as Bob Seger would say, in a much younger man's clothes. But anyway, so you just call up Virgin Atlantic.
Virgin Galactic, I called.
Virgin Galactic, excuse me.
Yeah, I called one of their top agents, Jay Johnson, and I said, I've never sold space tickets. I don't even know what this is, but here's my background, and I really want to participate. And he was just, a really kind person that said, okay, even though you're not really super qualified, I'll give you a shot. And really the idea just came out of nowhere. And so that's kind of always baffling to me to go back in retrospect. But yeah, the surf industry is, kind of an extreme sports industry. And and so I think I was kind of looking for the next, extreme thing that would inspired me. And
space would qualify for that, I think. Probably the ultimate extreme. Definitely.
Ultimate, definitely.
So let's talk about, because this is something that's near and dear to me. Number one, I only have a ninth grade education. And but most people don't realize that. Many people think I have a doctorate, and I don't. Um, I'm a genius, but doesn't matter. The point is, entrepreneurship has always been a proven pathway for those who have the natural ability of thought, cognitive thought, reasoning, and have an opportunity to really come out with ideas that begin to bring innovation.
Mhm.
And when I thought about, number one, private space industry, we see it today. In fact, yesterday, Musk with his Heavy Falcon, three of the booster rockets returning at the same time simultaneously. I mean, we're talking innovation now, Trisha, that is going to, I think, rapidly get you to where your goals. How do I get the hell out of here, so to speak?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, what's great about, Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos and a handful of other guys like him is that they're building the assets that we really need to just get off the planet, which is rockets.
Yeah.
And so they're doing all the heavy lifting. The government has done all the heavy lifting in terms of, creating that, technology and innovation firstly, with NASA, and now really space is completely accessible to us. And it's not just accessible for us to go to the moon and Mars, which are just, so future kind of related topics, but really there's a lot going on right now on board the International Space Station that that we can participate in as non-government entities and people, brands, organizations. And so
You and I
that
were talking about something on the ISS, and I had never thought about this. Private opportunities for companies.
Mhm.
I'd like you to talk a little bit on this, but why is it that we don't have any artisans on the ISS? Why don't we have the sculptors, the painters, the poets?
That's a great question. So just to go back a little bit on, what's going on with the International Space Station. So the International Space Station is really been our training ground for understanding how we can live in space. There's about 6 astronauts that are always rotating from different countries on board, and all they do all day is just research on, can we grow this? How does this make us feel? How can we eat? How can we survive without gravity? And the perspective is obviously totally different. And there's companies that have access to the International Space Station right now. One of them is Nanoracks. And what they provide is they provide access to, everyday people like us, students, educators, to send up experiments to the ISS for those astronauts to be able to work on. And so when we go back to how creative we are as a species, and why hasn't art been a primary focus for these astronauts, I think the time is really now. Now that we kind of have a better understanding of how we can live, breathe, sleep, and eat in low Earth orbit, we can actually figure out ways to provide emotional stability for ourselves up there as well, and for the astronauts right now. And art can really help us with that. And so I hope that answers your question in
It
short.
does beautifully.
Yeah.
Um, in fact, you and I were talking before we went live. The aspect of what we are now recognizing, where the artisans, what they can bring to a crew, particularly in the isolation of space, is just exactly that. It engineers and scientists, bravo, that they are, like you said, they are doing the heavy lifting right now. They have to begin to prove the habitat is, number one, sustainable. Get it. And I think you're correct that now is this opportunity, because if you have an artisan amongst the crew, they provide a human perspective, don't they?
Absolutely. I mean, if actually, if you follow, the astronauts on board the ISS, they're always creating. I think there's an astronaut there last year that made balloon dogs because he missed his
Yeah.
kids. Another astronaut that's well known, he was playing guitar, and so they're always creating because it's just so natural to us. But it's also a really great opportunity for people, corporations, brands to also get involved and help create the next era of art, which is space art. And what space art really is it's art that's really non-terrestrial to us. It's creative expression that is designed for space living, and supporting our emotional stability in space. And so it's designed with that thought in mind of space. And so what you can envision as beautiful and you know colorful and anything on Earth, it might be a little bit different in space, right? Because there's no up or down. There's I think a dozen or so sunsets and sunrises every day. There's no gravity. There's not a lot of interaction with a lot of other Earthlings. And so color and creative expression can really help us take what our species is about to another universe, to the galaxies, to everywhere. And so yeah, so absolutely.
I'm thinking as you're talking, I'm writing the business plan in my head, and so I'm thinking exactly, all right, so what's the value proposition here to an investor?
Mm-hmm.
And it occurred to me, I think it's about $2 million, maybe with SpaceX and the Bezos company. I think that the price is going to go down, maybe 750,000 to get you up to the space station. And I was thinking, if you could put an artist up there, and let's just do a random choosing of an artist. Could you imagine what their artwork would be worth back here on Earth?
Well, it's funny you said that. I actually tried to do an art program on board the International Space Station with Google and with Jeff Koons. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, it caught a lot of wings, but Google decided to back out for one reason or another. But the idea was to begin to think in terms of space living and how art can support that. And you don't have to send an artist up there. You can just send artwork up there to see how the astronauts interact with it. What's the value of it up there, and can it help them solve other problems? And so the value for investors and corporations, et cetera, in a project and a program like this is really content related. It's the content that you can gather from sending the art up there. Is it going to be biodegradable? Could it be outside in space? Can you design it in a way that doesn't create space junk? And how will the astronauts interact with it? And so all this is just super content worthy for a corporation to leverage. And in addition to that, it really helps support research and development up there for us being able to even live on the moon. And so really, what is art in space? Is it going to be digital, where you get to see a variety of different images, colors, sounds, and we don't really know yet. And so
That's a good point. What is art? I mean, the fact that you're in a zero gravity or near zero gravity environment, painting is going to be a little difficult. Although here in where I'm thinking about this, engineers, imagine designing a paintbrush that would be able to be pliable to a canvas in a near zero gravity. I mean, yeah, I mean, I'm just brainstorming here, but what would art look like? That's a very interesting point. Within that environment, what would you see as the ability for creating images?
Well, the International Space Station is really, like I mentioned, it's our training ground. It's government supported, but there's a couple of companies that have, private space stations that are going up into low Earth orbit in not too long. Nanoracks is one. I think Robert Bigelow
Yeah,
is another. And so
it's rumored the Chinese already have one up there.
I think the Chinese have made one or two, right? They have up
Yeah.
there, but again, that's government, and we're really talking, hopefully, in terms of private access for everyday people to be able to access that. And so, so the idea is that we experiment with it on board the International Space Station, right? And we don't really know, but they are sterile environments. So, if you look at videos from the ISS, it's pretty much white. There's wires everywhere. It looks very sterile. And us
Like a
human
padded
beings,
cell, actually.
It looks like a padded cell, and we are super creative people, right? We're really visual, and our emotions are all over the place all day. And so, maybe just alone, just bringing color up there,
Mm,
maybe that would, change your mood, right? If you wake up and you see a painting or something of an ocean or something that reminds you of Earth, that's a lot of what the astronauts sometimes miss up there. But going beyond that, I mean, have you ever seen like the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy?
oh, one of my favorite movies and books. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, check
Yeah.
out. I mean, imagine all the art that they created just for that movie, the space art they created for that movie. The possibilities are endless. You know, you could have things that float into space, and you could set
I'm
a
thinking
space
color.
sail.
Would blue be the same color blue, even in low orbit space? I mean, the light would be different. It would be,
The light would be different.
yeah, boy. Now this it gets very interesting just from, all right. So I could see the possibilities running all over the place on this. Um,
Yeah,
have you, so Google backed out, but there's so many other new companies now, and there's existing companies out there as well. I think that would have a tremendous opportunity. The opportunities are endless, as you said.
they are. I think before I was originally thinking that I would take one of like the biggest artists in the world, which was Jeff Koons, which he's, I don't know if you've heard of him, but he designed like the balloon dog, and he's kind of known for kitsch. But what I really liked about him is that he was more of like a creative director and didn't just paint on a a canvas. That he was more three-dimensional. So originally I wanted to work with him, and but now that that project didn't work out, and I'm trying to bring the project back to life, I'd really like to open it up to all artists, to
Yeah.
kind of create, collectively, what do we really think is art in space? It's space art. I called it space in art because that's really what it is. It's thinking from the perspective of space, and
I think this is,
creating.
it's enormous. I mean, Gene Roddenberry had a little bit of it in, Star Trek, particularly Next
Yeah.
Generations, that, the Enterprise was, a family oriented ship dedicated to the arts as much as the sciences. Um, from a corporation perspective, what has been your experience in their learning or their understanding of these opportunities?
That's a great question. I think corporations don't really get space. They don't really understand
You're
what,
right.
yeah, they don't really understand what they can do in space. They don't know how they can leverage space. They don't know how to create commercial model around it. And that's really what a corporation is generating revenue. And really, you know, in space and for us and on Earth, the value for them is content and how they
Yes.
can leverage that content to promote to promote the fact that they support STEM, or to promote the fact that they have a new product coming out, and maybe it was manufactured in space. So there's so many ways for them to be able to leverage space, and space is so cheap. If people out there really knew how inexpensive it is for the everyday person to access space, and I'm not talking about buying a rocket from Elon Musk, on that rocket, there's thousands of pounds of payload that go up to space. And so if people only knew how accessible space is, I think a lot more corporations would participate. For example, there's a lot of nonprofits that send experiments to the International Space Station all day. Companies like Dreamed Up, and I think SEDS. There's student organizations, and so there's so many different ways to get involved. But for corporations, the value is huge. The hard part is finding people like myself, like people like Jeffrey Mamber, people like that, to be able to create the map for them. Here's how we're going to do it. Here's what you're going to do. Here's how you can leverage it. And here's how you can create a recurring model that not only supports jobs, but education, and also your own, branding agendas or product agendas. And so yeah.
I'm sitting here thinking to myself, because I come from, the media background, I was the CEO of a company called US Creative back in the late 90s. And we're actually one of the first creative companies on the internet. But I keep thinking about this and I'm going, the first person who puts a podcast up there on the ISS on one of these private ventures, imagine what you're going to be able to do, number one, in copyrighted content, unique content. Wow. I mean, I'm sitting here thinking I know about 3 or 4 individuals and groups that would be interested in that. I think that has an interesting
Yeah,
perspective.
contact me. I would love to. I would love to come up with ideas on how you could
Yeah.
participate and organize those programs. There's so many resources for us. Like I said, NewSpace, private space has really opened the door for all of us to be able to participate.
Mhm.
And yeah, and so going back to that Google project, so I just kind of restarted it up and reconstructed it to open it up to all artists and not just 1 or 2. So yeah, I will be reaching out to media companies, but it's a hard sell because it's unbelievable to them. I mean, a lot of people don't even know that the International Space Station is up there, and then secondly, they don't even realize how cost effective it is. It's equivalent to them, spending money on a bunch of magazine articles and print ads. It's
Yeah.
that cheap, and the values are huge. And so yeah, to call
Well,
me, I would.
I'm looking in this group here. We have some brilliant minds here,
Yeah,
and writers. We have very sharp minds that, well, the idea is once the inspiration is given, it has a tendency to create itself. But I think this is where we're talking about is the opportunity. And when I'm thinking about different type of opportunities that don't even require from an engineering prospect. Yeah.
but
So go ahead.
I was just going to say, there's so many of these guys like the Elon Musks and the Jeff Bezos and so on. They've already taken care of the hard part, and then
Yeah.
there's companies like Nanoracks and people like myself that can take care of all the engineering that needs to go with it, so that you can get your product or your vision up there. So
And I'm just the type of guy when I'm sitting here, when you look at book deals,
mhm.
publishing companies are desperate for material. They pay huge sums because of a notoriety of a public figure. But I'm thinking about, well, what if you had, for instance, and again, I'm just brainstorming here, you could have anywhere from a GoFundMe account to where I could actually see this being set up to where you would have investors buy shares. My point is, you could send a writer up there and have them write a novel. Could you imagine the first novel written in space? I mean, these are the things I'm thinking of, and I'm sure that there's other ways of looking at this, Trisha. But
Yeah, I have
yeah,
like a whole basket of ideas that I've either worked on or would like to kind of throw out there and see who'd be interested in participating. But again, it's been a hard sell because private space and access to space is so new. It literally is like a decade old, and
yeah,
even less than that. And so it's just beginning it's just beginning to reach the masses in terms of accessibility, but still people just can't believe it. They think you have to be a billionaire or you have to be a government agency to have access, and it's just not true. Now, to send people to space, to send them to the International Space Station, it is a little bit costlier. It's anywhere
mhm,
from 20 to 30 million bucks right now, which the cost will go down dramatically soon. And there's quite a bit of training that's involved. But again, you can participate in so many ways
yeah.
without having to go up there, because there's already 6 astronauts up there that are just waiting to be experimented on, to do experiments on
I
things that
love that idea.
support. and
Yeah,
and really, by supporting these astronauts, right, we help build a new space ecosystem in low Earth orbit. And so once these private space stations can go up, you can have art shows up there, you can have hotels, you can have
I see it.
manufacturing facilities.
Yep.
And so there's a lot of opportunities for big companies to participate with those big guys for these private space stations as well. And there's just not a lot of awareness out there that these are really possible today, which they really weren't 5 years ago. And so, so
It
that's
is
really
true, to get out of the Earth's atmosphere is a little bit of physical challenge, but I think eventually we'll begin to have technology that will begin to buffer down those G forces. Hopefully, who knows? I may be only speculating, because I've built studios before,
okay.
post-production houses, and seriously, I'm sitting here thinking, well, if you could get a band up there, and there are bands that could do this type of thing, could you? So actually creating a studio up in space. I mean, I know that sounds wild, but
You can do a lot of things, and you can, again, work with people like myself and a lot of other people to create a commercial model around it, to
yeah.
figure out how you can have a revenue model, how you can create recurring business up there. And so it really, at the end of this day, what really I think is also really important to note is that, space is only about 60 miles up. It's literally from here, from San Diego to LA. I mean, if you were driving, that's how much
Yeah.
atmosphere and oxygen we have. Aside from our feet being on the ground, space is like we're in it. And really just going up a couple hundred miles and being able to survive and live and coexist and create a whole new environment up there, it's really not that far off. It's just as far off as, the first guy that decided to build a boat and go in the water and see, what happens. And look at us now. It's travel has become really easy for us on the water and in an air.
So do we have
So
any astronauts up there now, Trisha, that you would say are musically inclined? I forget the one you were talking about that was actually playing the guitar out there. I'm where I'm at is that I'd love to begin a project on meditation.
oh
What
yeah.
would it be like for a human, number one, that is aware,
Mhm.
and would NASA allow it? But if this was privately funded, this could be a whole opportunity to see and record the effects of what a human is above, it's still Earth's atmosphere, but still, you would,
Yeah,
I don't know.
that's very doable.
Hmm.
That we could definitely organize, an experiment for that. That one or two of the astronauts can participate in on the private side. It's very doable.
Yeah.
You can find out, how they do it. How does it feel after they do it? What are they doing? Are they going to sit down? Are they going to stand? Are they going to float? You can kind of come up with a lot of different ways to see what works up there.
No
And
kidding.
so,
I mean, here I'm
yeah.
sitting here and I'm just thinking, could you imagine getting in the lotus position up in near zero gravity? I mean, that is interesting. Oh, that is fascinating.
I
Oh,
never thought about meditation in space. That is really interesting.
uh,
Um, yeah. Are you a meditator?
I am. I
Okay.
long back in my youth, I
Okay.
was involved in a experiment by the United States government,
Okay.
that
Oh wow.
we were using LSD and they were teaching us transcendental meditation.
Oh.
And so I know that the CIA has been involved in meditation and meditation techniques. I'm thinking from a point, Trish, I haven't heard any experiments like this done.
I haven't
Um,
either, and I would love to talk offline and chat with you in greater detail on
yeah,
that. That
yeah.
I could probably very easily cost that out for you and give you, you know, how
Hmm.
some details on how that could be done. I think it's brilliant. Actually, I've never thought about that one before. Yeah, there's the opportunities are endless, and going back to consciousness, I think that also just knowing that we have access to space, and even just participating on any level that you can, I think can kind of help create a rise in our consciousness, right?
Yeah,
I think we're
yeah,
all feeling a little stale at this point in time. I think if
yeah.
you're over 40 years old, you kind of feel like there's something a little off with the world these days, right? And I don't know if we're like self-destructing, all these problems are self-imposing. We're self-imposing them on ourselves. I don't know if there's dark forces. Like, I don't really know what's going on because we don't really know anything, but we just kind of feel like there's something's off, right? Um, you know, all this technology that we've invested in, has it really bettered our lives? I don't know. And I really think that, participation in space can help us elevate our consciousness to see ourselves as part of this universe and not just this earth where we're having a hard time just getting along with each other.
Boy,
And
I'm
so
sitting here, my mind is going 1,000 miles
I
an
can
hour.
tell, I can tell.
Yeah, it's, well, there's so many indirect and direct benefits that I could easily put down in a business plan. Is that, number one, you have a mind, a human mind that's above the net. What I mean is physically the net that, whether it's 4G, 5G, microwave, etc., you're 225 miles up, so you're above that. Could you imagine, Trisha? I mean, we got to talk offline on this one because
Mhm.
it would be remarkable if we owned the data that could actually begin to quantify what the result. Oh, I'll stop there. But yeah, I
Yeah.
see where you're going with this. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's I think it's maybe the reason why we are participating, like even why like Elon Musk and all these guys, all these people want to go to space. They might be just like that 1 or 2% of the front runners, but really I think we're looking to kind of like grow and evolve as a species. And I feel like we all know that what's going down in here on Earth, we haven't managed it all that well,
No,
right?
no, I
And
agree.
so maybe we just need like a different perspective of how we can interact with the universe. And
Well,
so
I think philosophy, and I think we could probably actually get a meeting with Elon. Um, it's not that hard. It really isn't. If you have something that's of well thought out, you and I will do that. But um, you know, I look at the human experience as, okay, we have science. That's
Mhm.
number one. Science, obviously must have education that begins to support it because it has to be continually fed. But the one component I haven't seen in all of this of space exploration is philosophy. And I
I think
mean,
there's a lot of it. There's a lot of it. I think a lot of it is really premised around philosophy. Don't you think?
interesting.
Don't you think it's like our whole premise behind space travel is finding out who are we? What are we doing here? Where are we going? Because Earth hasn't given us those answers.
Well, Gene Cernan, I had the opportunity to fly with him
Oh,
for about two and a
fantastic.
half hours.
Okay.
And, he was the last man on the moon.
Yeah.
And he said at the time, he said, I was never a philosopher. He says, I was a military guy.
Yep.
And he said, that was my mindset. And I said, well, Gene, I mean, we were literally sitting in seat 1A, seat 1B. And I said, so what happens when you stepped out? He said, well, I suddenly realized there's a God.
Yeah.
He says, but he said, and he looked at me, he says, Wayne, he says, I was never trained to look at things other
Mm.
than, you know, so maybe there are, I just haven't seen him write about it.
Speaking of that, Gene Cernan, did you see his documentary on the last? It was called Last Man on the Moon, I think. Did you see
I
that?
have not,
Well, it talks
no.
about his life story and how he finally ended up on the moon, and he wasn't chosen forever and ever, and he was like the last guy. And that his documentary changed my life.
Did
I have
it?
to say, yeah, out of all the things I've watched and heard, that one documentary changed my life because it was just like his struggle of just not being able to make it with all his friends. Everybody else went, and him. And then not only did he get to go, but he ended up being the last man to go. And I
That's
just thought
what he
that's just
said to
like I
me.
love when life works out that way, right? It was just a beautiful story. And rest in peace. He was a wonderful person.
He was.
Yeah.
We were on a flight, on a United flight, and so I had the captain and the co-captain come in, and they had a chance to meet with him. But it was really sad was that most people on the plane didn't know who he was, didn't even know who
Oh,
Gene Cernan was. You
yeah,
know,
I believe it. I believe,
Yeah.
like, because
Yeah.
there were so many of those gentlemen that went to the moon, right?
Yeah.
So most people just remember Buzz and
Gene told me, he said, we're not alone. He said, I'll just tell you that straight up. He says, we're not alone.
did he really?
Yes, sir. That's
Did
exactly what he
he
said.
did he see other life forms, or did he
He
see like
said he's
one
under
celled organisms?
non-disclosure.
Oh,
He said
really?
literally, he said, when I'm dead, he says, I can tell you everything I know. It's
I've
literally
actually
what he's,
heard from a lot of astronauts that they have seen, like that have gone to the ISS, that they've seen like one cell kind of organisms floating that kind of look like they have an intelligence, because they're going in one direction and then they change directions, etc. But I've never heard of them saying that they've actually like seen an alien. But Gene went to the moon.
yeah,
And
he
so
said,
I
we're
bet
not
there's
alone.
probably a lot of secrets up there that are pretty exciting, right? Up there.
He was a nice
Um,
guy. And as I told you, my dad worked for NASA for 35
yeah.
years. And so for us in our household, UFOs, you know, they existed. It wasn't a surprise. My dad had worked on some top secret radar installations at the time, which was the NORAD defense grid. And I can remember him telling me that they were in Greenland. And he said regularly, he said it got to the point where, yeah, they were being watched, So I think that we are not alone. And I
We
think
can't
we
be.
know that.
It's just not
Yeah.
possible. It's just
So
not
let
possible.
me ask you something.
Yeah.
The question, Trisha, just came up to me. So are we seeing a loosening of the military from the aspect of privatization of space? It's one of those things. If you start having private citizens up there and they're seeing UFOs, bogies up there, I mean, it kind of blows the whole cover, doesn't it?
I don't know. I mean, to be honest with you, I've never had like a secret clearance. I've never worked as a contractor for a government agency. So I don't really know if the government is actually trying to hide anything. I don't
Yeah,
really know. Maybe they're not. I don't know. I think that we have an opening that is
I agree.
giving us access. And if we don't use it within the next 5 to 10 years, space will be militarized fully. And it will be weaponized, and in our access to space will be totally disintegrated. And right now there's so many companies that are working to give us access, and if they're not funded, if there's no corporations reaching out to them to build space hotels and manufacturing space and all these things, they're not going to survive. And so essentially space will completely go back into the hands of the military. And so that is a truth. And
Yeah,
so,
and I forget that there is still a percentage of the population who don't believe we went to the moon. And I keep forgetting that, there's that segment and out there. And, I'm reading some of the comments. And folks, if you don't believe it, that's fine. I
it
mean,
is fine.
yeah.
Everybody has a right to believe what they want. I mean, there's a lot of people that believe the earth is flat. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe they're right. Like, who knows? But the only way to find out is if we go. And if
Yeah.
we take it into our own hands and not the government's hands. And
I keep saying to people, folks, the Chinese now they've landed their craft successfully in the back end. The Israelis, it was a private company, by the way, Trisha, that
yeah,
funded that. They had a malfunction of a rocket and it went down. Some say maybe something else caused it, but folks, come on. You mean, where do you think that they get that technology? And you can go to any university and ask to go to their astrophysics lab. And if they have a laser and they get the time, they can shoot the laser up to the moon on the reflector that was put up there by Apollo 15.
yeah, all their trash is still up there too
Yeah, it's still
from
up
going there.
there.
But
It
you know what? I
is.
don't blame people really these days for not believing in things. I mean, the truth is that we're like surrounded by lies. Like
Yeah, we are.
from like the chemicals in our foods to the air to the pharma companies to we don't know what the government says is true, all these things. It's just like we're in this place where what do we believe? I don't know. It's hard to believe what you hear as the truth, as fact these days, right?
Yeah.
And really my point is that, you know, maybe we just need to go up a little bit and look back down to see what the truth is, because really it looks like we're self-destructing as a
I
species,
say we are. In
you
fact,
know.
I've done hours of teaching on that.
I know you have,
And
and I don't, yeah.
um, as you were talking, you know, I can still go back and I remember Challenger and Discovery, particularly Discovery, when
Mhm.
it literally, I was living in East Texas there and saw it literally coming into the atmosphere.
Oh wow.
So, you know, to me, you know, space, we're there, been there, and we're going beyond there. I have no doubt that we'll be on Mars within the next 60 months. What do
Yeah.
you think?
The I think it's absolutely probable. I think that us everyday people that are watching right now are going to be able to go in 60 months? No.
No,
Um,
no. Agree.
but I do think that there's access for us now just to go above Earth's orbit, and there's access for people that can financially afford it, or even corporations to fund research to go to the moon,
How
you
much
know.
does the Virgin Galactic cost? What were they
Well,
selling their ticket?
Virgin Galactic is a suborbital, so it only goes, you know, right above the atmosphere and comes back. And I
Is it
believe they're about,
100,000 feet? Is that where it hits?
no,
100?
I think it's a little bit more than like 60 some miles.
Okay, that's cool.
So if I'm still remembering that correctly, but theirs is about 250. And
Okay.
then Jeff Bezos has, you know, one coming out for tourism that's similar to Virgin Galactic, and I think his is might be priced a little less. But you can go to the International Space Station right now for like, you know, 20 to 30 million. It's not just about, you know, us going. It's about, you know, supporting the ecosystem that will support us being there. You
Yeah.
know, the private space stations and the International Space Station are so important to us being able to just get out of here, you know, just a little bit, so that we can even go to the moon and
I
see.
hear Arnold's in my head going, get your ass to Mars. You know, it's like we've got to get off this planet, and the elites know that. There's no denying that there is this concentrated effort to get off this planet.
Why?
Uh,
You know, it's so bizarre. Why do
yeah.
we feel this exuberant need to get off the planet? I think that's something we should all ask ourselves, you know.
Why is
I think
that?
from speaking to, like, you know, thousands of people over the last decade on space travel, do you want to go to space? Why not? Why would you? You know, it's either, you know, we got to get off the planet soon, or it's like, you know, it's just too expensive. You know, it's not for me. Or, you know, people are really busy with their daily lives, like
Yeah.
just trying to put food on the table, you know. So
Mhm.
why do we have this really urgent want to get off the planet? Um, and I don't want to say it's the elites that are pioneering this, because it's just not true. You know, Elon Musk was just an entrepreneur. Jeff Bezos was just an entrepreneur. Most of the people that are in the private aerospace sector are just entrepreneurs, you know. And there's a lot of guys that you haven't heard of because they haven't made as much money as Elon or Jeff Bezos that are in the game. And they're
And
just
a lot of
regular
people don't
people.
know that there are a lot of Silicon billionaires that are invested in these companies.
Right.
And so I'm sitting here, Trisha, and what you're saying makes perfect sense. I think it's the
Mhm.
next level of entrepreneurship. You and I have similar you know, back in the day, you know, we would enter into competitions to be chosen to present at investment conferences, and the
Mm.
competition was tough. And when
Right.
you're asking investors for 10, 20, $30 million, you best have your act together.
Right.
And so, and there's nothing more exciting than get a term sheet, you know, and
Right.
particularly when you can close a term sheet. But anyway, this is exciting, Trisha. You have brought this to a point that, like I said, we could put together some business plans. I'm tired of being CEOs, but we could do a business plan that the idea in this meditation alone is,
Yeah.
yeah, it's, yeah.
It's very interesting.
Sorry, I digress.
No,
Uh,
there's so many ideas. There's so many. I had this idea a number of years ago. I pitched it to Red Bull, I think. It was to, create a prequel to the Olympics on the moon, to send three teams of two up there to see, what sport can you create on the moon? Because we're not going to go on the moon and just become robots and just do research all day. It's just not who we are as a species, right? And so, what can you do on the moon that can, bring humanity to the moon? And so the possibilities are absolutely endless, and the value for corporations to invest is in the content, and it's in the results of the research and development. And so thank you so much for giving me an opportunity to share my opinions and perspective.
I love
Absolutely.
this because I'm thinking, talking to the producers of the battle bots and say, hey guys, have you thought about sending a probe up there? And, it's a promotional material. And could you see Red Bull basically with their logos up there as they get robots? Because we can send them up there.
Yeah, you can send robots up there. You can send CubeSats to the moon.
Is
You can send CubeSats to deep space. You can actually create a sailboat that is called a solar sail. It looks like a sailboat, and you can put a message on it. You can put whatever you want on it. You can send it to whatever galaxy you want, and so yeah, the opportunities are endless, and
So
it's
you
people like
have
you
your
that
email
yeah.
address here. Let's talk about how you want to open this up to the folks right now that are listening. And we've got a lot of open-minded people here. How would you see
Absolutely.
that play out?
I would say that if you're interested in participating in space at any level, please feel free to email me. I always love to interact and chat on anything space related. I think if you're a brand, a corporation, and you're at a level where you're a decision maker, I think you should really look into how you could participate, and I can share with you how you can leverage it and create a commercial model around it, and generate a revenue stream, create jobs with your participation. And you can be any type of brand, and it doesn't matter. And so yeah, that's it. And other than that, I'd love for people to just think space, just think about something bigger than all the chaos that we're creating for ourselves on this planet, and to think about how there's such a big world out there that we that can help us answer what we're doing here and where we're going. So
Deep,
yeah.
deep questions. I mean, a lot of people don't like to think those questions, that makes my brain hurt. Trisha, I just want to go ahead. What were you going to say?
Oh, nothing. Nothing. I wasn't saying anything. Sorry.
I'm sitting here, growing up through the corporate ladder, I was marketing and sales.
Okay.
That's where my brilliance was. And affinity marketing I worked for NASCAR
Oh wow.
back in the
Okay.
day, and we raised corporate sponsorship for the race teams.
Yep.
And those were big sales. I mean, people don't know it. To get your company logo on a hood back in those days, that was a $15 million sale.
Right.
The money is there. It's quite fascinating when I'm seeing these opportunities that, again, I can see why many companies can't see the value add, but it's definitely there.
I think it's also just getting to those right people. It's not that easy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so, and it takes years. Like this art project I've been working for the International Space Station. I've already been working on it for 5 years. And so I probably have received, dozens of no's. And
Really?
yeah, I think it was, before it was a little ahead of its time. And then the Donald Trump election, all these insecurities, just like, there was a lot of moods going on the planet. And so now I'm revisiting it back again, but these things take sometimes years. But if somebody has the money and has a vision, the access is like within 6 months, you can get something into space and gather the content or whatever you need to do. So the access is definitely there. Yeah.
Well, they announced, and I think that the Senate will approve it. They're going to make the Space Force the fifth branch of our military.
Right.
So we're weaponizing space. This is obvious. And you brought a very good point that I think there is this opportunity where privatization, the arts, the humanities can join hands and do some things other than just military government sponsored projects. I like this, Trisha. There, and folks, if you're an entrepreneur, don't let the crap stop your creativity is what I'm trying to say. You know, so many people bemoan their position at where they are, but folks, you'd be surprised how many ideas you might have. Trisha, I applaud you. I mean, you pick up the phone, you call Virgin Galactic and say, "Hey, listen, I can do this." And it opened up a whole new field for you. That's
Yeah,
what
and anyone can, anyone out there can, if they have something to add, if they want humanity to continue to evolve, anyone can get involved. There's so many private space companies. There's so many space assets that people can leverage. It's just a matter of, you know, passion. And if that's where your passion is at, you know,
Yeah.
we'd love to have you participate.
Well, I'm going to help you on this one. I like this idea. I want to pursue it. I think it's one that can get in front of the type of people that would. There is tremendous opportunity. Again, if we could discover, think, Trisha, the world right now it's a short powder keg. I mean, the fuse is like that long. And my concern is someone's going to come in, throw a cigarette and but the point is, imagine if we could find a human being who practices meditation, understands the techniques, and gets themselves into that place of where the brain, the alpha waves are down to the theta, and you're in that relaxed state. I'd really like to know what that experience is like.
Well, I can certainly help you down that journey. So I'd love to talk to you later about that.
We shall.
Yeah, I mean, the astronauts up there right now that could potentially do this experiment for you, you know, they're pretty qualified, I think, to be able to get into a meditative state. And in essence, they are athletes and thinkers at the same time. So, so yeah, let's talk about that. Definitely, I'd love to dive into that and see what, you know, what if you meditate up there and you get whole different types of downloads.
That's my point.
Yeah, like who knows?
I mean, I haven't, you know, that's why I'm just speculating, but I do believe we're not alone. You know, one of my philosophers from the first century was Philo. And in Philo's creation of the cosmos, he wrote that he said, there is no space that's not devoid of life, of consciousness.
Sure.
Yeah. And if you're above, you're in the firmament. Oh, this has got me exciting. Anything you would like to say before we close this out? Trisha, thank you. Number one for just the initiative of writing, and this is exciting.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you to the guests that listened to me rattle off about space, and I hope you enjoyed it. And I would love to, you know, come back and share with you updates and any other space-related topics. And so, yeah, thank you for having me. I love your show, by the way. I'm an avid fan.
Oh, thank you. I'm humbled. That humbles me. But thank you, Trisha. That's very kind. We're going to do this. I think that we could actually make a little project here. You know, I had John Martin on day before yesterday, and John has the unique ability of attracting whatever you want to call them, UFOs, ETs, and the correlation here of what we're talking about. I'd love to get him involved in this and see. Check him out, John Martin.
I'm going to check him out. You know, have you heard of Dr. David Jacobs?
Jacob sounds familiar.
Yeah, is it Dr. David Jacobs? Or so he is one of the foremost investigators, I would say, of aliens abductions, and he's my favorite. So I've been an amateur, you know, UFO alien researcher for about 15 years. And Dr. David Jacobs? I believe so. But he has interviewed, I think, thousands of abductees, and over, I think, a 35 year period.
Wow.
And he's come to the conclusion that they are infiltrating us through, DNA integration, and that they're planning on taking over planet Earth. And he's fascinating, and probably my most favorite alien UFO researcher out there. But I'm definitely going to check out John Martin. I'm fascinated by that.
I want to get a hold of David as well, and I think
Yes.
John would be an excellent person to bring in on this project. He would, we're going to do something that's not ever been done. We're going to pull together as many people as we can through this medium and do kind of like a human antenna array and send focused, concentrated thoughts to these higher intelligences.
I would love to be a part of that. That sounds amazing. So he connects with, he just connects. Okay.
Look at my Wednesday video.
I love.
Welcome, John Martin, classical guitarist.
Oh, it was a classic guitarist one. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. He good friends with Jimmy Carter, President Carter.
Jim Carter had seen UFOs, right? He was
He's this is going to be fun. This is more than synchronicity. And it's being filmed live to the world. You're seeing this, how this is all coming together. This is something we're going to talk. We're definitely going to talk. So, all right. Well, you got me excited. It's, I'm an entrepreneur. I always will be. I think that's how I came through the universe. I think there's a group of us who are spiritually entrepreneurs. We tread where angels fear to go. And I'm not afraid of risk, Trisha. That's what most people don't understand. The reason when you get to the point where the risk doesn't scare you, well, there's always that little bit. But for the most part, that's how innovation comes about. We're going to do something here. We're going to do something.
I'm excited. I'm absolutely excited about that.
All right. Well, stay on with me before, after we leave here. I just want to say thank you all. Thank you for being open-minded. Folks, that's the thing. You may not agree. You may totally have a different point of view, but that's fine. It's the idea. Remember, as I've told you before, if the only thing that you're gravitated is towards your agreement of your opinion of things, guess what? You're going to be going in circles. That's all that happens. It's only when you have a balance that challenges the ideas that you can begin to see the path straighten out. So that's my 2 cents worth. Well, thank you, Trisha. I will definitely have you back on. Please stay on as I leave out of here. Folks, have yourself a great weekend. See you back on Monday. For myself, I'll be watching the Masters, but that's just me. All right, folks, be good to yourself. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.